We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. It is now confirmed. It's looking like Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin. There will be a rehydration clause to ensure that neither fighter, rehydrates too much weight. Your boy Ego will break it all down right now in this video. Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin. They have sparred in the past, and now we have a fight. They did a press conference. The press conference was the week of the Canelo Munguia fight. Very heated. There was a moment where Tank slapped Frank Martin's hand. Fight I'm looking forward to. Great card. You got action stars like Gervonta Davis and also David Benavidez. So it should be a great card. Now, as far as the main event, I did see some things that I got to tell you all about in this video. So it looks like somebody on Instagram or Twitter actually said Frank Martin just stated on Spaces that there's a possible rehydration clause for his upcoming fight with Tank. He isn't 100% sure yet, and there is a rematch clause. So the rematch clause is not really surprising. Again, Devin Haney's team claimed they were the face of boxing in the A side, yet they gave Ryan the lion's share of the money and didn't have a rematch clause versus Ryan Garcia. Now, after losing to Ryan Garcia, you could see it's looking like that was a mistake to not have that in place just in case you wanted a rematch, right? But anyway, it says Frank Martin on X Spaces said there's a possible rehydration clause for the Gervonta Davis fight. Then somebody said, nah, I need this ninja to be sure before he gets rumors started. Tagged Tank Davis, tagged Errol Spence Jr. and says, is this true? If so, this ain't it, big homie. Y'all ninjas in the same weight class. I can't let you skate with that one. And Errol Spence actually seen it, and he says, yeah, it's the new WBA rule. So Errol Spence, as you guys know, Frank Martin is his fighter, man down. Hey, stop that cat, definitely. I definitely feel that, definitely, right? And he's confirming and saying this is true. This news is true, that there is a rehydration clause per the WBA. Now, the funny thing about my job and whoever that person on X was that said, oh, I can't let you skate and all this type of stuff. Let me give you my thoughts. One, it is so funny the level of hate that Gervonta Davis gets, and including people like Devin Haney fans, the Haneyacks, right? They seem to gravitate towards the side of hating on Tank Davis. But you look at how Ryan played it and finessed the situation, came in 3.2 pounds heavy, and then the Haneyacks are complaining that Ryan was too big. Like, this was, I'm talking about before Ryan even failed with the Osterine. They were saying, hey, but he purposefully came in overweight. So it's funny to see in boxing the level of bias. When you are a Haneyack and you love Devin Haney, then you're blaming Ryan for missing the contracted weight or saying it's an unfair advantage. Even Devin Haney's team, his attorney, put a letter into the commission saying, and this was in the actual 8-page document, stating, yo, it's unfair. Ryan purposefully missed weight, giving him an unfair advantage. But then the funny thing with this situation is all the Tank haters, now they're saying, oh man, they shouldn't have a rehydration clause. That's one. Two, Errol Spence just said, yeah, it's a new rule with the WBA. So somehow, some way, I've been in this game long enough. I can assure you there's going to be a contingent of boxing fans who somehow, some way blame Tank Davis for this and say, oh man, he put a rehydration clause on Frank Martin, yada, yada, yada. But in a response to a fan asking, Errol Spence again just showed you, yeah, he says it's a new rule with the WBA. So moving forward, it looks like all fighters who are fighting for the WBA belt, at least a solo belt. I don't know what they do in cases of like this weekend's fight, Usyk and Fury. If it's for all the marbles for undisputed, maybe they, change the rules because there's other sanctioning bodies involved. But if it's just one belt and just a WBA fight, it looks like they're going the same route as the IBF, and they're requiring their fighters to meet certain weight thresholds thereafter, aka rehydration clause. WBC has their own protocol where like 30 days, 14 days, 7 days, they make sure you're within a certain percentage. But a lot of the haters, see, when you're a hater and you hate fighters like Gervonta Davis, a lot of the haters, they don't actually know these things. So they just run around spewing toxicity, negativity, and hate. So every sanctioning body has their own particular rules. When you're due up for the mandatory, what exceptions, like I said, the WBC makes you weigh in 30 days and 14 days and 7 days, right? Certain rules change depending on if it's a unification. IBF, they've always really done the rehydration clause, right? So you don't balloon up. Now the WBA looks like they're doing it. And now time for my thoughts regarding this. I personally love it. I'm an old school fan of boxing, and back in the day, boxing used to do same day weigh-ins. They used to do things like smaller gloves. They used to have unlimited rounds. They used to have 15 rounds, were just different eras of boxing. And what I've noticed with the evolution of boxing, the doctors and the scientists, they kind of got away from the 15 rounders because of potential long-term damage for guys who took punishment. So that got in championship fights got reduced to 12 rounds. Fine. But we've also gotten out of the way of doing same day weigh-ins. And now you have people who are manipulating the scales and walking around at 160 and then fighting at featherweight, or walking around at 190 and then fighting at 140 and 147, and pretty much kind of gaming the system. So not only do I love this or like it, I love it. I truly do. And I think all the sanctioning bodies should do this. And this is not about Tank versus Frank Martin. This is across the board, because moves like this, sometimes you got to shock the culture and make updated adjustments. So many fighters are truly fighting out of their true weight class. So boxing will get back to the competitive fights. Certain people's records might look different when they start fighting people their actual size. So I truly love this move from the WBA. I never had a problem when the IBF did it. Now, it's funny because like the Tank haters, they're going to somehow blame Tank. And Tank, how can you blame him? And he's the face of boxing. So just with the A-side rules, even if Tank mandated, like with the Ryan Garcia fight, you're fighting at this rehydration clause, or it's going to be this size ring. That's part of your perks as the A-side. This here is not even Tank's doing, but I love it for the sanctioning bodies because, again, you got guys who are basically gaming the system. And just think about it. If you're at your job and you've never missed a day and you're a hard worker, and they come out with, you go in the break room, they got a bulletin board and a piece of paper with a memo. It says PSA, attention all workers. There's a 5-minute grace period to punch in. If you punch in, if you're scheduled at 10 a.m. and you punch in after 10:05, you will be marked down as late. Guess who's going to have the most problem with that? There ain't nothing you can tell me. The people who are going to have the most problem with that are the people who are habitually late. The people who aren't punctual are going to be the ones that don't like this enforcing of the rule, which as a company, you're wasting company time. We schedule at 10, customers need help at 10, and you're not getting here until 10:15, 10:30, right? So per a business, it makes sense to do this. But again, the only people who have a problem with it would be either a hater or somebody who's trying to utilize it to their benefit and crunch down into a division that they can't make and hold for one day. So in the Tank Frank fight, I have no problem with this. So if this is the first fight, you got to keep in mind Tank had a secondary belt and then he got elevated to the WBA belt, the full champion. And if this is a new rule like Errol Spence is saying, I'm with it because it's similar to the IBF. The problem is, again, you got people who are getting with these strength and conditioning guys and nutritionists, and they're getting close to the weight, and then they're crashing their weight the week of the fight, doing all this extra stuff, sauna suits, and being in the hotel room with 20 layers on and blankets on and stuff like that, just to hit a number on the scale. And a lot of them are hitting the number on the scale in the AM and then doing the ceremonial weigh-in. And then they're just eating and replenishing. And some people believe that some fighters are using IVs and other things that may not even be prohibited, but not getting caught with it. Replenishing, getting electrolytes, getting the carbs, carbon back up, eating some pasta, eating some proteins, amino acid, blah, blah, blah. And then they're rehydrating to these astronomical proportions. And it's kind of like an advanced style of cheating, if you will, because you got one guy who doesn't necessarily do that. And then he's a guy at, let's say, we'll just make up a weight class, let's say 147. And then he's staying close to his weight in his off season. And you're doing this extra stuff, hitting the number on the scale, and then you're blowing back up to like 190. And then this guy is more moderate and he's going back up to like 155, 158, something like that, right? Maybe 10 pounds, 157, somewhere in there. And you up to 190 the next day. You see what I'm saying? So now this guy who weighs 155 got to fight someone close to 200 or in the 180s or whatever the rehydration. And that's, you're seeing that more and more in boxing, and it's only going to get worse as the medical science advances. And, you know, we learn different things and different workouts and different extreme weight cuts. People are finding these little, it's almost like a loophole, if you will, finding these little loopholes to crunch down into a division, and then you just blow back up. So I'm not mad at this. And then when we look at Gervonta Davis, how can you even be mad at Gervonta Davis, which is funny to me? Gervonta Davis is literally one of the very few people in boxing who's a star and a champion that's not doing this. So if other people aren't doing it, that's their fault. That's the adjustment they need to make. Gervonta Davis, I made a video about it. He literally weighed 138.4 off the top of my head weeks before the Frank Martin fight was even official. So he's not doing this. So why would I be mad at him? Again, the only people who complain about things like this are people who they're mad because they can't get away with it anymore, or you're just a hater, right? Tank Davis, he's not gonna have to worry about it because Tank, for all intents and purposes, he's a smaller guy. Like he literally could make 130 from what I've seen in his pictures if he wanted to, but the money's not at 130 for him. That's why he's at lightweight, right? But a lot of these other guys, they want to say they're lightweights or 140, like even Ryan Garcia. He literally hasn't really, I don't think he's ever fought at 140 and made the 140. I mean, you guys fact check me. because his fight with Javier Fortuna, Oscar Duarte, they were all catchweight type of fights. And then he made his Devin Haney fight a catchweight fight, even though it was initially contracted at 140. And now Ryan is on wax saying, I can't go lower than 143. I got to fight at 133, 143 or 145 or something like that. I might move to welterweight. That means you in the wrong weight class, partner. That's what that means. If you have to do all this, same with Devin Haney. Devin Haney has 2 fights at 140, and he already is having to weigh in naked to hit the weight on the scale. That means you're blowing up too much in your offseason. And the funny thing is, fighters from yesteryear, they would probably have less things at their disposal, I would say, in terms of like medical advancements and science and supplements and supplementation that's legal and things like that. But they would balloon up. Some fighters were undisciplined in the past, but they would find ways to make weight. This new generation is almost like a TikTok generation where they're almost lazy, I feel, because case in point is Ricky Hatton. I read reports of Ricky Hatton like in his prime where he was weighing close to 200 pounds, 180 plus, 190 plus, and he's not even the tallest guy, but they said he was ballooning, going that way and weighing like, they used to call him Ricky Fatton, I remember, right? And he weighing an aggressive amount of weight for his size, given that he was fighting at 47 or so, right? So you're fighting at 47, but you're pushing 200 in your off season. You know, I think Winky Wright was saying that he loved donuts. Other guy comes to mind would be Bernard Hopkins, excuse me. Another person that would come to mind for me when it comes to like the weight would be Roberto Duran. After the Sugar Ray Leonard fight, they said Duran was just like partying and stuff like that, gained some weight. But the difference with Duran, Winky Wright, Ricky Hatton, that generation of fighter, they would do whatever they did and like party, drink, or whatever they were doing, gain the weight and then lose it and then be ready to fight. So I feel like the fighters from yesteryear were built different. I'm built different. They were truly built different because they made whatever choices, eating, partying, celebrating, living the celebrity boxer life, whatever. But then they would make sure they hit their numbers on the scale and come crashing down with all that weight. Versus this new generation, it's like they need early morning weigh-ins, and then they just do a ceremonial weigh-in. Some of them, like Ryan, just missed the weight. I don't know. It's looking weird in my opinion. So I'm not mad. I think all sanctioning bodies should start to implement this rule. Get people who don't belong in certain divisions, get them out of that division, and then we can get back to some real boxing. Church.